Who defines what's essential, what's not essential? I mean, dude,
I think weed shops were essential, weren't they?
yeah,
Like,
weed
that's
shops,
wild,
strip
man.
clubs, I think were.
Alcohol, like,
Yeah.
come on. This is when the subscription box model and the subscription model was really cranking.
For you, you've hired a ton of different people. What is more important, their competence level or their cultural fit?
Oh, shit.
Well, you say too fast, but you're still here.
Yeah.
Welcome to this episode of the Confidence Quotient podcast. I'm your host, Michael Carrillo. Join with me, co-host Zane Kaufman.
What up?
And a very special guest in the studio today, Luke Hartelust. Bro, I just want you to say it one time for the camera, just because the way he says his own name, I'm like, dude.
I thought you were going to butcher it then, to be honest with you. It's Hartelust.
Yeah,
Yeah.
dude, I love it, bro. Do you have a middle name?
Conrad.
Oh my.
Conrad.
Luke Conrad Hartelust.
Yeah, actually, just go ahead and look in the camera and say that one more time.
Luke Conrad Hartelust.
Yeah, dude. I don't know what it is about Australians that come to America. I don't know if they send us their best, and everybody else in Australia is just not good looking. But there's something about it, dude. Are you a Hemsworth? Are you related to any Hemsworths?
No, mate. It's the don't let the long hair fool you, to be honest with you.
Is that what it is?
It's the accent and it's the long blonde hair, yeah.
So if you think you didn't have the accent and the hair, like we'd just be looking at you like a regular guy, you think?
Well, dude, I wouldn't be me either, to be honest with you. So I don't know where I stand.
Yeah. Well, dude, Luke's an amazing guy. He is the founder of Manly, which is a men's supplement company doing a lot of really cool things. It's got an amazing story that we're going to dive into. But how long have you been here in the States here, Luke?
I've been in the States, it's just over 8 years now. We came here in 2016.
Wow.
A couple of young pups with a dream, essentially. And
Yeah.
It's just evolved over the years. It's been a great journey.
Yeah. So let's talk about that. You moved over here with one of your buds, and I'm going to say mate.
Yeah, that's
One of your mates.
One of your mates.
Yeah.
Zane and I were talking about this beforehand. We were like, dude, what's the over-under on how many times the word mate is going to get said today? And I think we arrived on 29 and a half. So
29 and a half.
Let's try to get the over today.
No, of course.
Okay.
29 and a half.
So you moved over here with your mate, and the dream was you wanted to come and bring a fitness style that we don't necessarily have very widespread here in the United States. You kind of wanted to bring that over, right?
Correct. We I'll give some more granular context around how that kind of came about as well. So I spent most of my adult working life in and out of resources in Australia. So fly in, fly out work, underground diamond drilling, surface shot firing, and then spent the last part of my career, about 400 kilometers off the west coast of Australia on an oil rig.
Jeez.
And I know when I tell people that, they're like, "What?"
Have you seen that trend? It's a trend on TikTok where it'll be like a girl will call her either dad or
her brother.
husband or brother or boyfriend,
Yeah.
just a man in her life, and say, "Hey, I just got an internship
With ExxonMobil.
to be an underwater welder."
Oh shit!
And they're trying to make it sound like it's this like cute little like harmless thing. That's got like one of the highest mortality rates for any industry.
I think so. Yeah.
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 So were you
100%.
doing any of that, or you were just working on the rig?
No, so I was a roughneck. So on the rig. So if you Google it, you can Google it right now if you want to.
Yeah.
It will come up as far as the research that I've done, and it hasn't been recent, as the #1 world's worst job.
Oh my gosh.
And that's it's just slinging steel on a drill floor. It's extremely dangerous. You're covered in shit the whole time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's hot. It's just not that enjoyable, really.
Yeah.
Well, what makes you want to do it? Are they paying you really well?
So the thing about resources is no one would do any job out there unless they paid extremely well.
Yeah.
And that's the draw card for a lot of people. When I started, it was in the mining boom in Australia back in 2000 and, man, I don't even know, like 14, 15. And going from earning, $5.50 an hour as an apprentice to flying over to Western Australia and, earning $120,000 a year overnight without any experience.
Yeah.
Just sucked a lot of young Australians, I suppose, over
Yeah.
because of the cash. But they also provide a even roster. So you're working most of the time 6 months of the year. So you'll do a 1 week off, 1 week on, 1 week off, 2 weeks on, 2 weeks off, 28 days on, 28 days off, which is what I was doing in
That's
the
got to be brutal, man.
Yeah.
I mean, I've worked some pretty I mean, I've worked jobs that I've hated, but I mean, that's like, where's your mindset at? I mean, are you depressed in those times? Like, what does that look like?
How do I put it? So I'll probably butcher this because I don't know the percentages, but the divorce rate for resources is skyrocketed.
Yeah.
Like, it's through the roof. And so if we're looking at, the oil rigs specifically, you're going out there to spend 28 days straight working, and depending on what you're doing, right? It just depends on what your role is as to how much joy you're going to get out of that. Most of the time, I'm going to speak on behalf of a lot of the guys there, but most of the time, most of the guys don't enjoy what they are doing.
Yeah.
They're doing it for the money. They're doing it for their families, and it's 28 days of 12, 13-hour days. It's hot. It's 120.
Jeez.
130. And they do it because they also get the even time as well. So you get the even time off. You get a month off after. But in terms if you look at it from a mental health perspective, and you're out there surrounded by, for the most part, individuals that are quite unhappy, individuals that are potentially, in some cases, on a bit of a power trip as well. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And you are, at the end of the day, because of the money involved with resources and oil specifically, you are, at the end of the day, just a number. But for them to keep their KPIs in place, the numbers have to make sure that they're not getting hurt, right? Or there's no injuries. And so it's very structured.
Yeah, they're looking after you just enough to make sure that your KPIs stay this.
Basically, yeah.
So as you're in that, what was the long-term goal or play? Did you feel like you're going to be there for a while? Was it just, all right, I'm as soon as I hit this certain revenue point, all right, I'm out of here? What was sort of the end game there?
Yeah, great question. So getting actually going from resources, mining resources in WA, Western Australia, and then actually going onto the oil rigs is actually quite difficult to do, because it is the most sought after job in resources in the vertical, right? Not specifically what I was doing, but just to get out onto the rigs, because it's higher pay and it's guaranteed even roster. And then when you fly out, they fly you anywhere in the world. So wherever you live in the world, they fly you there. So and if you're single like I was, you're able to travel the world. And experience a lot of different locations, because you've got 28 days off to basically do whatever you want. And so when I initially built my kind of career pathway for what I wanted to accomplish out there, I took the world's worst job because it was a stepping stone into subsea engineering, and I had to work on the drill floor to do that. And I had gotten, I got 12 months into it, and I was like, fuck this.
Yeah.
Fucking hell. Like, what have I done? What have I got myself into? And the jobs that I had in the past, like underground diamond drilling, as I said, surface blasting, were also terrible in that sense. Surface shot firing was probably the best of the three, but I knew that once I was out there, when I had that moment of realization, I was like, this is not what I want to do.
Yeah.
And I stewed over that for months, thinking, what is my problem? I'm making great money. I'm traveling the world. And I have a career path that is going to essentially, at the end of the day, make me quite wealthy, right? And I just was not interested in doing that. And so I started getting frustrated internally, because I was like, well, what's my problem? What am I going to do now, essentially? And I realized that I still remember this moment. I had this one moment of realization. I was standing on the drill floor. It was fucking hot. It was covered in shit. I think I was 11 hours into a 12-hour shift. Can I swear? Is this,
Yeah.
You're good.
Sorry, boys. I didn't check. I'm
No,
Australian, man. It's going to come out.
Yeah, we want you to be real, bro.
And I think I was maybe 21 days into a 28-day swing as well. So just over it, right? And it just hit me. I was like, fuck. I know what my problem is. I don't want to work for anybody anymore, right? And I always had an entrepreneurial mindset in that sense, that I could make anything happen, but I didn't really know what I wanted to do, what vertical I want to be in, or industry, or career path to pursue outside of, chasing big money in mining and resources. And I realized that, and I said, okay, I'm going to and I left school at 16, right? So I don't have any formal business education. And I was like, okay, what am I going to do? I'm going to develop the skill sets to be able to invest and build companies so that I can replace the income that I'm making now and get off the rigs and then build wealth, right? And while I was, this is a long story, but I'll give you the high level as well. So while I was working on the oil rigs, I lived in Thailand. So my 28 days off, I would spend it in Thailand. And Thailand, if you know Phuket at all, there's one place in Phuket that is famous for Muay Thai. It's called Shillong. And it's one street, and it's full of kickboxing and bodybuilding, CrossFit gyms, and little boutique hotels and kind of just cafes. And I watched this place go from nearly a dirt road to like more of a metropolis where people would come from all over the world to train, or whether they were professional fighters or just people on a fitness holiday looking for a good environment. And still to this day, it's still one of the most motivating places I've ever been in my life. And so every other month, that's where I lived, and I saw it grow. And one of my best mates, who ended up being my business partner, was also living there at the time as well. And we saw an opportunity in the market. And so we leased a block of land, designed and built a heated HIIT studio, hot yoga / HIIT. And because there was a good market opportunity there, but it's my first business. It was in Thailand, and we were extremely naive with how we were going to grow and scale.
And how old are you at this point?
26.
Yeah, okay.
26. And so, long story short, that flopped big time. We overcapitalized, we spent too much money, and we just didn't have any experience really operating a business, let alone in a foreign country. And most of the time when you're in a foreign country, especially like Thailand, the people that you hire are great, but they're not there to build a company. They're there because they're on a holiday. They're living on an island. So we just had a very naive model, so to speak.
So would you call it purpose is getting you off of this oil rig into, or the steel, you call it the rig.
Yeah.
Is that what you would categorize it as? Like, man, I just wanted more purpose in my life? Or was it, I know you said you didn't want to work for anybody, but I mean, what is that driving force that's in you?
I think in terms of internally, like who I am as a person, I've always wanted more, and I've always not been satisfied with what I was doing. Like I moved around from job to job, from trade to trade, just wanting to understand what I wanted, because I didn't understand that, right? And so that was another extremely big kind of shift. And sorry.
No, you're good, man.
That was another big shift. How many are we at?
Tony's gonna start counting here.
We'll count it up.
Dude, that just rolled off the tongue, dude. I wasn't even trying to do that.
I like that. And it was just I wanted something different, you know. And I think that moment I had just finally had enough, and I was ready to take a bigger step, and really kind of move into the next kind of evolution of who I was. In a way.
Yeah. I think that's a really cool thing too that you're talking about is your first gym business flopped, right? Or it didn't turn out the way that you wanted it to. But that didn't make you gun shy. It didn't make you get out of the gym business.
Yeah.
It made you actually double down on it. What was that sort of process in your mind like?
Yeah. It was exactly that. It was a process of just identifying a failure as a failure, and really just looking at, okay, so I remember the point again of realization is like, oh, fuck, this isn't going to work. And this isn't actually going to get me even remotely into the position where I can safely kind of leave these rigs, right? And it's like, so what's next? And we started looking at different business models, and I didn't want to build something in my backyard, meaning I didn't want to go back to Australia. It was too essentially easy, but I really wanted something that was going to change my life. I wanted to go somewhere. I loved living in foreign countries. I loved experiencing new connections, new people, new places. And I started looking at gym franchises because setting a gym up in a foreign country is tough, right? You need all the supply chain logistics and branding and get the space and build the space out. And if you're in a foreign country, it's quite hard, right?
Yeah.
And so we started looking at franchising, saw F45 was extremely successful in Australia, and that basically the rest of the world for that franchise was open. And it just so happened we had some contacts with the leadership team at F45, so we started diving into that business model. And when we started to go down that path, I remember asking Evan at the time, I've lived all over the world at this point, but I have never lived somewhere where I believe I could set up a life long term. And I asked him, where would you set up? And he just looked at me and said, Cali. I'm like, well, I've never been to the US. Like, that sounds good. Let's look into it. And then, long story short, we packed up everything and came over.
Wow, without ever coming and visiting or scoping it out or anything.
Exactly, yeah.
Wow. So you decide to move here. What's objective number one? You set foot on foreign soil. Like what's priority number one? What do we got to do?
So we, at the time, at this point, I think I was 26 or 27. I think I had my 27th birthday here. So again, we're two strapping young Australian lads with a little bit of cash in the bank and an idea, right? And Evan, between both of us, we didn't have any contacts here. I had never been here before. He'd been here on holidays a couple of times. The franchise, as a company, as an enterprise, was still in Australia. So they hadn't. There was one location here. It was in Las Vegas, I believe. And they were opening maybe a Santa Monica location. And so we just came and we had a list of objectives that we had to accomplish over a 2 to 3 week period. Which was, set up the company, find an accountant, partner with a commercial real estate agent, find where exactly we want to actually open, and then start negotiating on real estate, fly home, get the terms done, buy the franchise, sign the lease, and then, that's a perfect scenario. Right?
To do that in 3 weeks, by the way, is
ambitious.
Ludicrous.
Exactly. And so there was this one moment where we were sitting in the car in Santa Monica, and I looked at Evan. I remember I looked at him and I said, mate, we had like 3 days to go. And we had made a lot of ground, by the way. We had made a lot of leeway, so to speak. And I said, if we go home, this is not going to happen. There's no way. This is too hard to do remotely from Australia. Like this it will draw out and it won't happen and we'll end up running out of money. But we're on the Australian dollar, which was like 0.65 of USD at the time. So like an Airbnb was costing us an arm and leg. So we were sleeping in the car most of the time.
Wow.
Meeting people, a lot of really nice people that kind of were in industry as well. Sometimes we slept on the couch, but most of the time it was car, Airbnb, someone's couch.
Wow. But dude, when you're coming from an oil rig, that's a lot. Like know what you're coming from.
Yeah.
Well, especially it's not 130 degrees, and it just doesn't get that hot here. You know what I mean?
Well, that's California. It's just beautiful. That's why.
Yeah. So what was the first break for you then? And I mean, you guys are running up against wall after wall after wall. How did you start to make some real headway there?
The biggest obstacle that we kept coming up against was that we don't have any credit, right? And so if you're a foreigner even with a little bit of cash in the account, and especially if you're looking to do a brick and mortar, you have to have a landlord that's going to take a chance on you, essentially.
Yeah.
And we drove up and down the West Coast between Malibu and the most southern point. It would be downtown SD, right? Between Malibu and downtown SD for 3 months, trying to find a really good piece of real estate, and we would negotiate, and we would always get to a certain point, and it would basically fall apart due to the credit. You know? And so that was the toughest component for us throughout the entire journey, was nailing down the real estate to be able to open number one. But once we had, I'll backtrack a little bit here as well. So when we were sitting in that car, and this is a funny story. We would probably talk about this off camera, but we had once I said that to Evan, he was like, okay, so how are we going to stay? Because we're burning through cash. We are burning through cash. We haven't got any deals done. You know what I mean? We've only made a little bit of leeway. We've made some great connections. We've set the company up. We've got accountants and some real estate agents, but nothing solid. And he said, well, look, I've got a mate in Vegas that always said I could come and work for him. if I was here. And I said, all right, call him. Anyway, he said, yeah, boys, whenever you're ready, drive out to Vegas and I'll give you a job. And so that, as I said, that's another story. But once we kind of had that solidified, we're like, okay, let's cancel these flights. We canceled the flights, and we, as I said, just spent the next, 90 days or a month initially going back and forth in negotiations. And then when we kind of had one nearly nailed down, then we went out to Vegas, spent 2 months in Vegas. And then once we signed the contracts, then we flew home.
Gotcha. So you finally found somebody that was willing to take a risk on you guys.
We did. And it just so happens it was in La Jolla as well.
Wow.
So
not a bad place.
Yeah. I mean, we fluked that. We drove through La Jolla and we're like, this is beautiful. This is such a phenomenal town. I still love that town. It's like a second home to me now.
Beautiful.
And what we saw, though, was a lot of competition. And I think the mindset of most individuals is there's a lot of gyms in La Jolla. If you drive through La Jolla, there's studios and gyms everywhere.
Yeah.
And most people, that would scare most people away. And for us, we looked at it as great. The clients are here. We just got to make sure that we're better than everyone else.
Right.
So there was 7 gyms on our block.
Wow.
Seven, not like 2. There was 7 gyms on our gyms, studios, cycle studios, bar, and all that kind of stuff. And so for us, it was a huge leverage point to open the first one in San Diego and make that one successful as well. And with that, it kind of steamrolled from there.
How'd you get the landlord to buy into the vision of, hey, dude, we don't have credit. We've got a vision for this. We know it's going to work. You got to just trust us. Like, what was that process? Like, you just sweet talk them? They heard the accent?
No, not at all, actually. It was quite the opposite.
Yeah.
But what we did was we brought on a partner in the US who was actually our real estate agent at the time. So our commercial agent, we brought him on as a partner to help us get this deal done.
Yeah.
And then really just leverage the fact that he was from the US and that, most of the percentage ownership of the company was still foreign, but he still had enough to be able to get these guys over the line, essentially.
Yeah.
Gotcha. Yeah. So now you're in La Jolla. You're in a saturated market. What's the strategy to begin to penetrate that?
Man, you need to go back through my Facebook back then. Oh, mate. Like, my accent was so thick, too. Like,
really?
I was watching them a few months ago, and I was just like, holy shit, Like, I had to tone it down quite a bit because I was a coach, essentially. So we had 50 people in the room, and I would run through the entire workout, and then everyone would fucking do something completely opposite to what I was saying. And then finally, one of my trainers come over, and she goes, no one can understand what you're saying, right? Like, no one. And I'm thinking, that's why they keep doing the wrong movements. And so since then, I've learned to kind of tone it down, and now this is just me. But when I go home, it's quite thick.
Can you? Is it like can you thicken us? Can you make your accent thicker, like on demand, or is it like once you start to get into that?
Oh, mate. Fuck, mate.
You start drinking a little bit too. It's
if I have a couple, all of my business partners are Australian as well, so I've been able to obviously keep the accent, which has been nice.
Do we have an accent to you?
You did when I first moved here, obviously. Yeah. But now when I go home, because I go home, there was a few year period where I didn't go home over COVID, of course, but generally like once a year or once every other year. And I go home, I pull into Sydney Airport, and I'm like, holy shit, like it's a more of a culture shock there because everyone has a really thick accent, whereas now your accent to me is very normal.
Yeah. So you're over here now, like people are starting to get accustomed to you. How are you getting people to say, okay, hey, dude, there's a million different options. How do I choose? Why are they choosing your guys' gym?
Yeah, we had no capital for marketing or operations. So we knew that it was really kind of sink or swim from day one. And because we had invested everything into opening the location, and we had about a 6 to 7 month delay due to some issues with the actual structure of one of the walls in the location. So we had burnt everything we had. Mm-hmm. And we had rented an apartment which had no furniture in either. It was literally, I had a blow-up mattress and 2 cardboard boxes as my bedside tables.
Wow.
And a cooler and a little TV that someone had gave us for marketing. So we had no money.
Yeah.
We had spent everything we had on making sure that this dream was going to kind of stay alive. So in terms of being able to run ads or do any kind of paid advertising or paid media or media buying, we couldn't do it. So we knew that we had to rely on our personalities and our skills to really just develop relationships within the community. And so we spent months, because we had the time, because we had the delay, we spent months making sure that everyone in town knew who we were. And then just doing a lot of business development with aligned companies that were in town, and offering our services in exchange for theirs, and really building more enterprise value for our members through those strategic partnerships. And when it come to launch day, you know, our place was packed. It was stacked. And for Evan and I at the time, by the time we launched that, we had 30 days to generate enough revenue to pay the rent from that place. Otherwise, they were going to kick us out.
Wow.
And in 30 days, we sold 100 memberships.
Wow.
Yeah, and it just steamrolled from there. And people would refer us. Groups of people would come because they heard about our location, and it's this new training model. It's F45, and there's these two young Aussie guys that are there. But our strategy, because we didn't have the operating capital or the funding to be able to really do high impact marketing outside of guerrilla stuff, we just made sure that they had the best experience, and that everyone that walked through that door was our best mate. And that's the way we treated everybody, and it worked, and people loved it, and we had it was a great platform. You know,
I mean, like in today's world, I feel like so many people are making decisions based on feelings, right?
Yes.
When you got 2 cardboard boxes and you're living on an air mattress, your feelings at yourself are like, man, dude, I don't want to do this anymore. I want to go back and do something else. Talk about the grit that it takes to overcome that, maybe that self-doubt or that feeling of, man, I just want to give up. You know?
Through the entire process of even getting to the point where we had locked in the location and we had bought the franchise, and we're still 6 months out from opening, the amount of low blows and lemons and mountains that we had to climb, with aside from being small business kind of entrepreneur chasers, so to speak, just being foreign in the country had its challenges, right? From visa issues, as I said, credit issues and things like that. So the amount of adversity that we had to overcome on a consistent basis was pretty intense, especially for the first 12 months. But having an individual, like having a business partner and a mate who was just as bought in as you are, that made that transition or the transition over here much easier. And it definitely wasn't easy. You know, there were times where I was sleeping in the studio, you know, and we would do shifts, and I was sleeping in the studio, and I would roll out a yoga mat, take a 40-minute or 45-minute powwow in between classes, because we were working from 3 a.m. to 10 p.m. every night.
Wow.
And we didn't have any money to pay anyone to help give us a hand. So we had to clean the studio. We had to do all the sales, all the client management, to coach 10 classes a day as well. And, and it was a lot. And at the same time, what that did for us as individuals from a personal growth perspective is allowed us to learn what works really, really fast. Because it was sink or swim the entire time. And so as soon as we would implement something new, we figured out very, very fast what worked and what didn't. And for us as individuals, you know, kind of thrown in the deep end to all of a sudden, then we grow and we have a team, right? And we're all of a sudden, we're leaders in a company. And I had leadership roles in my previous roles in resources. So it came naturally, but by no means was I a leader at that point, you know?
Yeah, you had to develop those skills.
100%.
What was for you, like, because you guys ended up scaling to several locations and doing all that kind of stuff. What was did you see that as the light at the end of the tunnel? Did it kind of, you know, I got to imagine you had that plan going into it. Hey, we're going to start you know, scaling this pretty quickly. What was that process like?
I mean, it was all, as I said initially, it was all new to us, right? So scaling to different locations, leading a team, and building and scaling teams in each, and then removing ourselves from the operational capacity of that location, and then rinse and repeat in the next city. And for us, every city that we opened in, we opened in a new city. One that we had some contacts in, but not, or new town, but not that we had a lot of presence in. And so it was actually quite interesting. It was like, so how good are we at this at the end of the day, you know? And if we can make this work here, you know, can we make it work in any market?
Right.
And initially we had our processes were shit.
Yeah.
You know, like we grew very fast at the first location, to the point where we got a lot of opportunity to continue to open more quite fast. So before the first year was up, we already had set up the second company, and I had purchased the second franchise, but we hadn't opened. And so we actually went from San Diego to LA, which was silly, because we put a 2-hour drive in between each location. But I knew that if we could get a really good location in Hermosa Beach, that it would absolutely crush.
Yeah.
It's a great town. It's got a great demographic. It's very affluent. It's all young professionals, very fitness orientated. And we wanted that location across the road from the beach. You know, that was kind of the dream. And we ended up getting it. And and we did what we did in the previous one there, but we just did it a little better, but not that much better in terms of how structured our processes were at the time. We were genuinely okay at what we were doing, but it was the community development aspect that really kind of made us successful, because our processes were not there. And I remember I said to Evan when we bought Hermosa, I said, I'm not going to do what we did last time. I said, we need help from the get-go. Fair enough. We opened it, broke again, and so we had to rinse and repeat the trauma from the last time as well. Not as bad.
Yeah,
but
you got a little bit of experience now.
Exactly, but we just again had no capital to hire people and to really make a dent with marketing either. So it ended up being a lot of business development in town, a lot of community building, a lot of strategic partnerships, a lot of in-person guerrilla marketing style as well. But again, it worked. And you know, we quickly grew that location, and it was kind of, as we were building that one out, it was kind of on to the next already. And so we opened 3 in 3.5 years, I think. From moving here initially, and it was really too fast. Like, we grew a little bit too fast in that sense. And we didn't stop to kind of really pull back and figure out, initially anyway, how can we kind of optimize and streamline and structure our processes and our enterprise a little bit better than we did. Once we stopped to do that and do the work, it was a lot more efficient.
Well, you say too fast, but you're still here.
Yeah.
You know, so it really, all that is just, I guess it's relative, but you as the owner and the operator, you're like, dude, we're cooking here. Like, I really got to start putting some processes in place here. How many did you guys end up scaling to?
We ended up with 3. 3. Business partners opened another one.
Nice.
There's one in PB here as well.
Oh, cool. Yeah, that's awesome. So at what point did it go from, I'm working in the business, we're guerrilla marketing, we're doing all these different things, we're door knocking on the healthy restaurant next door to send us clients. When did it start to turn into, okay, I'm separating myself out of that, like maybe I can take a little bit of a breath and work on the business and not in the business?
It's funny how to kind of really kind of pinpoint that moment, because it was a little bit of a varying role the entire time, you know, and I really slotted into more of the leadership role early on, and was able to kind of identify and really get pretty well rounded at process development and optimization. And so I started doing a lot of those things early on, and really, when we moved from La Jolla up to open the Hermosa Beach location, we had removed ourselves, put in a manager.
Nice.
And at that point, I think we had about 10 people working for us at that location.
That's awesome.
Wow. And then we kind of went and did the same thing in Hermosa. And then for the Hillcrest location, we brought on a partner to operate that immediately as well.
Nice.
And we built a team underneath them.
That's great.
So, but there was a lot of in and out in terms of working in the business or on the business. And after probably 2019, we were doing really well. And But we had a few issues with the franchise, a few headbutts, or head clashes, and we were kind of ready to sell, and then obviously COVID happened, and so the entire industry shut down. We weren't an essential business, and so we spent 2.5 years crawling back to where we were, and that 2.5 years cost obviously, a lot of people went out of business, so we're very lucky. But for us, it cost us a lot of money, time, energy, and attention. We went from 30 to 35 employees down to 5.
Wow.
Overnight.
Wow.
And that's a very hard process to go through. You're having to let a lot of these people go. But at the same time, we went from having about 1,200, about 1,000 to 1,200 clients to under 200 in 48 hours as well.
Wow.
So in our eyes, we're doing everything we possibly can to save our companies, and the government and the cities are against us. Actually, the only people that weren't against what we were doing were the police. They were like, look, we get it. They shut our gym down as well. And a lot of the guys would literally say, if their call comes in, I'll make sure I come. You boys just do what you're doing.
Wow.
Which is awesome.
That is awesome.
But the city would come in and scrutinize us quite a bit.
Yeah.
And it's, who defines what's essential, what's not essential? I mean,
I think weed shops were essential, weren't they?
Yeah,
I mean,
shops,
wild,
strip
man.
clubs, I think were.
Alcohol? Come on,
Well,
man.
I mean, dude, if you're really thinking about, we don't want to get too political here, but I mean, if you're thinking about if there's a disease going around, you want your body to be in the best possible shape.
100%.
Yeah.
Right?
100%.
Does that not, I don't know.
All that stuff was so backwards.
It is 100% an essential business.
I think so.
During that component.
I don't
Yeah.
know.
So you were already kind of ready to sell before COVID even happened.
Yeah.
You get hit with this once in a lifetime thing that's that happens for those next couple of years. How do you start crawling back?
So we just pivoted immediately to an online model as fast as we possibly could, and it wasn't a great model, and a lot of people, it saved a lot of companies, but the companies that I think that didn't adopt it fast enough and effective enough, they were the ones that unfortunately went out of business.
What does an online model look like for a brick and mortar gym?
So for us, we flitched everyone to online workouts essentially.
Oh, wow.
So we did Zoom workouts, but we did programming and nutrition as well for our guys, so that they could have an online program at home.
Wow.
And we just did that in the first 2 days and launched it.
Yeah.
But it saved a lot of revenue. It saved honestly hundreds of thousands of dollars of our revenue that we were going to lose had we not had a decent solution.
Right.
And that evolved over time because COVID lasted quite a while.
Yeah, well, I was going to say that too. I mean, to come up with a pivot that quickly within 2 days without an end date in mind with how long all this stuff was going to last. Some people are like, well, let's just wait it out a little bit longer before
It's only supposed to last 2 weeks.
Yeah, it's only
right?
supposed to last 2 weeks. Let's
yeah.
just wait out the 2 weeks. I mean, within 2 days, you guys are like, okay, dude, let's get this going.
Yeah.
What was driving that? Because I'm assuming a lot of people did just wait, and like you mentioned, they went out of business.
I'll be honest, it was probably fear for the most part. Fear and just a good understanding that we don't really, for lack of a better term, lay down. We've spent years of our time, energy, and attention, blood, sweat, and tears building that. And my biggest fear was like, fuck, like this could shut us down and we could go out of business, because I think the percentage was like 6 out of 10 gyms were.
Yeah.
And so we just went to work, and it was just like a relentless work ethic to make sure that what we've spent years building didn't crumble because of a government mandate.
Right. Right.
What was the ultimate reason for back in 2019 wanting to pivot out of, or maybe sell? Like, was it going back to that purpose? Maybe like you felt like, man, I should be doing more, or
yeah.
What was internally? What were you thinking?
Internally, I was actually quite torn and unsettled at that point. From 2016 to up until probably about 2019, for that 3-year period, I felt like I was very aligned with what I was doing, and I was fucking fired up every single day. I would get in there. I loved what we were doing, and I think over time, some a few issues with the franchise in themselves and just butting heads in that sense, and going through the motions. I felt like internally, I felt like I had outgrew the model.
Yeah.
And I didn't want to be a franchisee anymore in that sense. And so that became a little bit more stale for me in that sense. and I was ready to pull the trigger on something that was going to be and provide more personal growth, because I feel like I had kind of hit my stride in that sense. And I wanted to bring in something that was going to challenge me a little bit more. And whether that was opening our own concept, or going a completely different option into e-commerce, you know. So
did you almost feel like you were working for somebody again at that point?
There was just too many barriers in that sense. And, you know, it was more of an integrity and a morals component, where if I had invested in HQ in this company, you know, I would not treat people the way that we got treated without trying to bag the company out. It was more of a morals and an integrity kind of stand. And I just said, I'm not going to buy any more of these locations. And once I had made that decision, I was like, okay, so what is the point? And if I'm not going to buy more, because the goal at the start was to get 20 or 30 of these things.
Wow.
Yeah.
And I got to 3 and I said, I don't want any more. So then it fast tracked that feeling of, I want to change what I'm doing, what direction I'm going, you know?
Yeah. So then you kind of, again, go through another process of self-discovery. What do I want to be doing? What do I like? You know, what are my strengths? You know, as I look back at your story up to this point, being on a rig, I mean, that taught you a lot of grit. That taught you a lot of perseverance. Then, you know, becoming a franchise owner, you're starting to develop leadership skills, operational skills, organizational skills. And now you're like, okay, dude, I want to put all these things together and make it my own thing. How did that land you with supplementation and the customization of that?
Well, I mean, shit, it's weighted because it's a long-winded question. So, a long-winded answer.
Yeah.
I had, like, during the development of our portfolio of gyms, right? And I was kind of in the front seat for quite a while, and I started as a terrible leader in that sense. I made a ton of mistakes, and leadership is about showing up with integrity. Is about showing up authentically through your values and holding a space for the individuals in this container to grow, right? I was very intentional with that, and I did well in that sense. But I would still always fly off the handle because of my pursuit for excellence.
Yeah, and you're Australian.
Constantly. Yeah. And I'm loose because I'm Aussie. You know, and I wouldn't do it a lot in public, but I spent so many times as extremely irritated, and we weren't attracting initially like the people that I wanted to attract to the company as well. And I used to think it was everybody else, but until I took radical responsibility, for lack of a better term, or 100% accountability for that, that's when everything shifted for me. And moving through the sale of those locations, it was a great experience, because again, I had never sold a business before. And we sold 3 different locations. We had different partners and investors and landlords and accountants and attorneys, and across the 3, and I was doing all 3 deals at once with the same buyers.
Wow.
And so there was a lot of moving parts, but throughout the entire process, I learned a lot about acquisitions, and I learned a lot about essentially like valuing a company and what adds more enterprise value to increase multiples, right? Yeah. And I loved that process.
Yeah.
And so I started really kind of looking at, you know, what was going to be next for me in that sense. And I was working predominantly, I was doing some consulting outside of owning and operating the portfolio for gym owners that needed to, you know, turn their business around essentially. And I started working in a bit more of high performance as well. So outside of the coaching and outside of the consulting, moving towards helping male executives increase their personal and professional performance. And one of the major findings from that work that I did was that no one knows how to improve their performance at all. Like in terms of from a health perspective,
Right.
like, and these guys are already extremely wealthy. I was talking to a few of my mates that had exited for
Right.
eight or nine figures, and they didn't know what a nootropic was. And I'm like, you're the CEO of a 9-figure company, and you haven't even looked into those things, you know? And so it became very apparent that there was a huge opportunity to really kind of serve the male executive and male professional market with something that was different, because at the end of the day, men don't know what they don't know.
Right.
Meaning if they're feeling irritated or sluggish, or they have brain fog, or their sex drive is low, or their energy is low, a lot of men don't know where to even find the information to begin to improve those aspects of their life.
Right.
And so I did some R&D in the subscription model, and this is when the subscription box model and the subscription model was really cranking.
Yeah.
And I realized there was nothing on the market for men. And so I built a subscription model where we would plug in specific products from other companies that I'd trialed and tested that stacked a number of different categories together, so they would have the ultimate stack, essentially. And I went through 2 different models with that company, and it continued to kind of fail, and I would just hit a wall. And the last try with Manly essentially was like, I'm going to give this a crack, was when I was doing some research on the personalized nutrition and the looking at the advances in AI, genetic testing, blood analysis, and understanding where the wellness industry is going, and it's all towards the personalization. But because of the advances in tech and blood analysis and genetic testing, a new era of personalization came to the forefront of the marketplace, and that's the precision health model, or the precision wellness, right? And it's really just defined as an approach that uses individual data to predict how a person will respond to specific dietary patterns,
Right.
or nutrient recommendations, right? And I knew that was going to be the future, essentially. And so after diving in, I looked at what we would need essentially to be able to build a successful company and be able to bring a valuable product to the marketplace that we were happy with, that would actually improve the biomarkers of these individuals. And we just put the pieces to the puzzle together. We've onboarded a phenomenal science team, and we've made the right strategic partnerships with our labs and our suppliers. And it's been a long process to get to where we are now from the initial idea as well.
Yeah.
Are the partnerships that you made, are those the ones that are kind of guiding you towards, which supplements work the best? Because there's a lot of trash supplements on the marketplace.
Yeah.
And like anybody can type in, probiotic.
Yeah.
But not all probiotics are made the same. So how did you kind of filter through all of those to get to what you wanted? Was it all, hey, I'm going to test all of these? Or is it, what does the research look like?
Yeah. So what we did was I brought on potentially the number one men's health expert out of Australia to formulate our supplementation based on specific results from the biological information from each user, basically. And so we went through and built the entire model from all of the different prescription components and what the dosages would be and what specific ingredients out of vitamins, minerals, herbs, extracts, and aminos would be, which were correlated to the specific biomarker, essentially. And we went and built those out, and they're all built on clinical research as well. And so what we did was we went and sourced one of the best suppliers in the US to be able to source us the best ingredients possible.
Yeah.
And then that all gets shipped to our co-packer, and it gets packed and shipped.
Wow.
Precision based on every order. Every order is essentially different. So you can have up to 20 different ingredients inside your supplement formulation. It just all depends on what shows up in your blood work.
Wow.
That's amazing.
That is awesome. Dude.
Well, again, it's nothing like anything that is out there right now.
No, and I like that he said about, men don't even know where to look. Like,
yeah, that's
I
true.
can't tell you how many times I go to my wife and be like, hey, what do I need to take here?
Yeah.
And then she'll tell me and I'll look it up and I don't know which one's the best one. It's just, what am I supposed to be looking for? You know what I mean?
And that's the issue with specifically the supplement space is there's just a lot of shit on the market and there's a lot of fillers that are in a lot of the products that are on the market.
Yeah.
And when we went down this path, I wanted to make sure that we were a transparent, evidence-based company, meaning I'm not going to give you a product that makes me feel good without understanding what it's doing under the hood. And that's why starting with a biological baseline is so important. That's why the first step is to get the blood test.
Yeah.
Because based on the levels and the results of those 19 biomarkers is going to determine what your nutrition protocols are, what your lifestyle protocols are, your environmental health protocols, and also the supplementation that gets put into your formulation.
Right.
And which makes it completely evidence-based.
Yeah.
And so what we do is we track the user's blood work using a frequency of blood tests. So every 90 days, we send you a new kit. Once you've taken that sample, sent it back to our lab, once that data is then in our platform, all of your protocols and your formulations actually update with the improvements in your biology. So you can see what you're taking is either working or it's not.
Yeah.
Right? And so then it's an evidence-based approach for optimal male health, essentially.
So I mean, dude, there's just so many high level concepts right here.
I know, dude.
But with that, I mean, just to get back to just kind of like going from having a vision to executing it, putting a bunch of really smart people together in a room, leading that, being the visionary, having the humility to say, hey, look, this is my vision, but I don't know all of this.
Yeah.
Trusting people, and then workshopping all of that, and then here's the end product.
I mean, you make it sound simple.
Yeah. Well, I know it's not. Like, how does that happen though? Like, I mean, you just like, again, we've talked about this as well, but leading other people, and you talked about some of the leadership lessons that you had to go through. Being and leading people that are a lot smarter than you in their specific field. How do you get people to buy into vision and culture?
Great question. It may be different for a lot of people, but for me, I was extremely intentional for the first 7 years of living in the US about developing a reputation that people want to do business with. And I always did right by the people that I was in business with, by my business partners, by our investors, and then essentially also who our consumers or clients were. And so over time, that compounds on itself. And when I set out at the end of 2022 to build this new concept, I leveraged my network heavily to be able to build the right relationships and get in the right conversations with the right people that I wanted to work with. And through that, I developed really, really strong relationships with some amazing people over the years who just so happened to be a very good fit for what we wanted to build. Essentially.
Yeah. Again, I think a lot of that, and what I'm hearing from you is you have a pretty good understanding just in the short amount of time I've known you to probably understand what people's goals are within their psyche, or what makes them feel validated, or what motivates them, to be able to incentivize them in that way, and then have it all come together for a common purpose.
Yeah, it's all about how much integrity you have and how well you can align the values of yourself, the company, but also the individuals that you want to work for you and with you, right? And if everything is aligned and you have a compelling pitch to be able to pitch this vision and have people come and join the journey and then work towards that same mission or vision, it's not an easy thing to do by any means, especially if you have to convince those people to leave what they're doing and then come and join you on your journey of uncertainty.
Yeah, take that risk.
Take the risk with you, and that you have to have a track record. That's number one. You have to operate with integrity, and you have to find people that their values are aligned, and you have to have a compelling enough pitch and vision that it makes sense. And you also have to have some crazy in you.
Yeah.
You know what
absolutely.
I mean? Which, I'm all about the crazy.
Yeah.
But it's more about making sure that there is an alignment across the table and that there is a value exchange and that you're not operating out from a point of selfishness at this point.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? You're that a little bit further on in your career where you understand the value of time, money, and attention from someone else, and the opportunity cost of them actually coming along with you on this journey. So it's definitely a skill to be able to pull together a team like that.
I'm curious, and I don't think there is a perfect answer for this because it's such a polarizing thing, and I've heard people go both ways on this. For you, if you've hired a ton of different people, what is more important, their competence level or their cultural fit?
Oh, shit.
There's no perfect answer on this.
I think it depends on how coachable they are. So
it's that third C.
I think it depends on how coachable they are, because cultural fit means that their values are aligned with the company's and your values, which is very hard to overlook past.
Yeah.
But when I look at who I want to work with and how I want to build a company, I want to find the best individuals I possibly can that are the best in the world at what they do and that are way smarter than I am, and put these guys in a position and in a space where they can excel and succeed. And so competence is also extremely important.
Especially in your world.
100%. But if they're not culturally a good fit, then the competence aspect is probably overthrown anyway. Because the work isn't going to be as good. And the relationship isn't going to be as good. And I know this also sounds cliche, but it in business, it's also not just the destination, right? It's not about winning constantly. It's about finding a space and a ground where everyone wins and that everyone is actually has a lot of upside within whatever the deals that you're doing, whether it's new vendors, strategic partners, or whether it's with the people that you work with. And so if the cultural aspect is out of alignment, the company will be out of alignment in that sense.
Almost got to build those pillars of like what you fall back on when you start to question where you're at, And
I'm sure too, like depending on the role, like if you're talking to a data scientist or a there's some roles, and not that you're treating people within your company with different standards, but the guy might be a great guy, but he doesn't know anything about blood work or DNA. Like there has to be competence.
Yeah. There needs to be competence in every way, shape, or form, especially if you're doing something like
customizable to people almost.
Yeah, scientific, but there's implications here if you're not.
That's why
you can really mess people up.
That's why we partnered with the best.
Simply
put, that's why we partnered with the best.
Are you just again as a leader? Are you more of you got to earn my trust, or everybody has my trust until you break it kind of person?
I go completely off energy and integrity and values. So if the individual has good energy and I have a great conversation and the relationship gels, then I provide definitely more trust on the front end. But if it doesn't go that way, like, look, I've been burned before many times in my career, many times. And I don't think I can draw it back to a poor judgment of character. It's just when there's money involved and when there's in business, people want to win. And as I said, my mindset has always been to make sure that both parties win and there's upside for everyone. But in terms of feeding out trust, it depends. I don't know how to answer that better than that. To be honest. It depends solely on the individual. Really.
It's a tough thing. I mean, we've asked other people that question, and it's almost like somebody said one time, you have your gut IQ or your gut quotient, just like, what's the feeling that you get from this person? Obviously sometimes that can be wrong. But it's like they say, if you're taking a test, usually your first answer is usually right. And you got to, again, you have to have enough life experience, I think, to be able to feed your gut with enough information to be able to make those judgments.
100%. Yeah.
Yeah.
Definitely.
So, okay, so now you're in the place, team's grown, you're seeing this as now, like, dude, you've got all this experience that has led you to this point. You're heavily involved in the investing side of things now, or getting investors on board with what you're doing. What is the vision for this? Are you like trying to, let's scale it to this point so we can exit or, get bought out, or what's kind of the vision that end?
Yeah. Our goal and our mission, so to speak, at Manly is really to serve 1 million men. And that's in many ways, many shapes and many forms, essentially. But what we want to do is help 1 million men improve their personal and professional performance. And the product that we have now with our precision packs is just the first kind of step to being able to do that. For us, early days, like we just did a strategic partnership with Hyrox, which is the sport of fitness racing, which is a catalyst to that mission. Hyrox has a phenomenal community. They have a really highly engaged, great community, and they have a very well-oiled company and machine.
And it's relatively really new.
Yeah.
It's a few years old, but they've it's quite large in the UK and Europe. They draw big crowds.
Yeah.
But in the US, it's taken a little bit more of a slow burn, right?
Yeah.
Because there's a lot of competition here in the US, are very specific with what they like with sport. But it has seen exponential growth over the last couple of years.
Yeah.
And for us to be able to partner with a company like that without being on market is really a testament to what we're already doing and who we are and who we are as a company and what we stand for as a brand. So to get back to your question, our mission is to serve 1 million men. And we want to create, our focus is community. And our focus is how are we showing up for individuals or for athletes and for men outside of providing our product. What impact are we making on the communities of our consumers? Can we support with any philanthropy, or can we support any of these athletes in any of their endeavors? And that's the exciting component for me, to be honest with you. And so as long as we're showing up in that way, and as long as we're, for lack of a better term, making impact in the specific way that we intend to, we're going to be here for a while.
Yeah.
In that sense.
Yeah, again, I've got all the confidence in the world that you guys are going to knock it out of the park. And you guys are in the process right now of getting ready for a big launch.
We are, mate. We spent all last year, the last 13, 14 months developing in dark mode. So we developed out our digital platform, built out our team, built out our physical product, which is the supplement component as well. And, we're just about to announce that we will be launching beta, which is going to be a 60-day program. We've got 100 individuals coming into the program to test the product. And provide evidence-based data on our product. So allowing us to figure out what percentage of what demographic experience, what increase in or improvement or in the specific biomarkers, so that we can leverage those components. Yeah. And when we're going to launch on May 19.
That's exciting, man.
Yeah. So it's soon.
Who's the perfect client for you guys?
Honestly, we have 2 psychographics essentially, or demographics, that we're really targeting at this point. And the reason that we took up the opportunity to partner with the sport of fitness racing is it's because it's now a hub for hybrid athletes. Yeah. And for us, knowing that, NSF certification for precision supplementations or personalized supplements is really hard to obtain and it's expensive, right? But that's the direction that we go, and we have a lot of individuals in our network and on our science board and on our board that have deep tentacles in NFL and NBA. But in order for us to market to those kind of athletes, we need that certification. Yeah. And so we're looking at really who are professional and executives men, and knowing that these guys are all health and wellness focused as well, and a lot of them are actually hybrid athletes, whether they're gym owners, whether they're coaches, whether they're the everyday gym goer that just wanted a sport to compete in, and see where they kind of stack up in fitness. Hyrox was a great opportunity for that, and so we're really just focusing. That was a long-winded way to say it's professional men and hybrid athletes, because they are at this point they're very similar and
It's pretty crazy how quickly. I know it's been around for a while, especially with like the class style fitness stuff, but the competition stuff now, I think in the last 5-10 years, even with like High Rocks and all the other, Deca Fit and all these different just events that people are doing now, it's huge. It's a huge market. I think it gives people that sense of competition again, community. As people that are maybe not athletes anymore, it gives them a sense of purpose and something that they're training for.
You hit it on the head with everything you said. It's definitely the sense of purpose component and the community aspect. When you get to a point, and whether you stop training for, whether you were an athlete and you kind of stop training for that, and the only opportunity that you have to really compete is maybe a marathon, right? And you're not at Ironman level, right?
Yeah.
And then Spartan Race kind of sparked that new opportunity for the everyday gym goer as well to just compete for something. And if you look at the level of engagement in any of those, whether it's DecaFit, Spartan, or High Rocks, the community is very, very tight. Yeah. And if you run a High Rocks, it's like CrossFit. People will talk to you only about CrossFit if they know that that's what you do.
It's a personality.
Yeah, exactly.
That's awesome, man. Yeah. Well, listen, Luke, where can people find out more about Manly, get more involved with you? What does that look like?
Yeah, great question. So you can jump on our website, getmnly.com. All of the information on the product and the company, on our science team, you can check that out. On the ingredients, it's all on the website as well. So if you're interested or you're intrigued, check that out. It has a lot of information. You can get in contact with me, Luke_Hartelust on IG. And they're the two best ways.
Dude, Luke, this was a killer episode, bro.
This was a killer episode.
Thank you for having me on, boys.
Ton of wisdom. I really appreciate your time coming down here. Dude, follow this guy, get involved with Manly, and we're going to have you back on here sooner than later.
Let's do it.
All right, my friend.
I appreciate the conversation. Thank you.
You killed it, man. Appreciate you.